Today we're going to do some odds and ends on our 1988 Suburban. The windows don't really go down well or at all, and the locks don't really work well or at all. So we're going to kind of strip the doors and do that, and well, the tailgate doesn't open and we got to mess around with that too, so that's the plan for today. Let's get cracking. Well, so we got our tailgate latches, both sides, and the center latch greased, cleaned, adjusted, everything, and now she seems to open and close pretty good. So I think we can button that back up, but before we get too far, got to replace this rubber seal along here because it's banging back and forth on the glass. So I gotta order that. I don't know how much that costs, but that's a definite have to do kind of thing, just for kicks. All right, so we can clean the inside of the tailgate, button that back up, and get a seal for that, and then that'll be done. On these square bodies are fairly straightforward. On the front doors, you got to take these two bolts out, and this one's missing, but you got to pull these caps off. The way that works is there's a tab here you push in, and then you pull it back and away. If you don't, you break these tabs off like some previous person did, but got to push this tab in and pull it back that way. Then you can get to these Torx bolts here. You can take them out on each side. This pull strap goes through. This strap goes through into the frame of the door. Oh, that's supposed to be glued on. Well, it's not. Oh, factory marking there. Well, I'll be careful not to bend these aluminum pieces because you can't straighten them out once you bend them real easy. Not hardly at all, but there's two plastic clips that hold these things in ordinarily, and we'll probably fix and repair that when we take care of that. But make sure to take this lock knob off. It just unscrews. The panel has to come up over the lock portion of it. And then, where's my Phillips head? There's a series of Phillips head screws you have to take out. There's two here in the armrest. Those go down into, there's a bracket that comes out, and those go down, so when you pull your door open, you're actually pulling on the door frame. There's a third thing that holds this, a third fastener that holds this arm on, so it won't come off. It'll stay attached to the door here. And then there's a couple Phillips head screws around here. There's one back here you don't want to forget to take out. And there's four along the bottom of the door here. You don't have to take this bottom carpet strip off to get into the door. See, it's kind of pulling away there. I might have to do some cosmetic fix there at some point, but I'm not going to worry about that just yet. We're not quite on the cosmetics. We're just getting the everything, all the mechanical and electrical working at this point. We want the windows to go up and down nice, and we want the locks to function nicely. You don't have to take this pocket off. Those just fasten. One way to get your screws out. This pocket just fastens to the door panel. It doesn't actually fasten into the structural part of the door. Out. All right, so then there's two plastic push clips along the sides here. Feels like this one's already either out or broken. And one on the back here. Just be careful taking them out. They're very easy to break. If you've ever done this before, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And once you have all this loose, you don't want to forget to take this door handle bezel off. There's two screws inside here on the front. The bezel actually goes into the door frame and helps hold the panel on, so you have to take that off. Just kind of pulls off like that. Be careful not to lose the rubber insulating strip there. And then once you have that loose, if you have a window crank at this point, you would take the pin out and pull the window crank off at this point. But we have electric, so there's two ways to do this. You can pull the switches out and then disconnect the power wires, or you can pull this off and then disconnect the wires. There's you want to do it this way. There's push tabs on here that hold it into the door. Pull it out like that. Oh, well, either it was broken or I just broke it. One or the other. There was a metal clip missing there. These are the metal clips that you're pushing in with your screwdriver to pull it out. And you can pull off this electrical connection very gently by working it off with a screwdriver. These old-fashioned GM switches, they're pretty much all the same, whether they're for seats or doors or what have you. They're just copper connections. And it does have a, you can kind of tell the right side up of this bezel by the numbers on it, but I don't think it actually has, it probably has an up and down, I don't know. Yes, it does, because these two upper pins determine it has to go this way. And there's usually a long centering pin as well on even the small switch, which you'll see. And we can push that back in there, and we can do the same with this little switch here. Ow, don't stab yourself in the hand. You gotta be real gentle with these old plastic ones. I'm not being real gentle, but I really ought to be. And this one, this is what the long pin's for. This one didn't have it, but it'll have the holder on or thingy. It just screws off there. That's supposed to hold it on. Clearly somebody has been in here before. There's parts missing. You just take that off. And again, when you put it on, these little switches are 3 across, but your long pin is the only one that comes through. So that's how you know that you're putting it in right. So now that we have everything off, didn't forget that screw. So now this kind of hooks down along the top of the window here. And this is easiest to do with the window down, but the window doesn't want to roll down very well right now, so I kind of work it up gently. Gently. Doesn't want to be gentle. Well, get the window down. Probably not. Then work it out around all of your door handles and your door lock. What are we hanging up on now. What are we hanging up on? Lost the metal clip there. It's not supposed to happen. Come on. Lost a metal clip here. Just gonna fold that back into position. We can set the door panel aside. Put that in the back seat for now. Okay, now we can get to all the innards. Well, there's not even much holding that on. There's supposed to be more sound insulation and things in here that's gone, so clearly we're not the first person in here. Now we can access the innards of the door. I think we can fix that. I have to glue the bezel back together and get a replacement. These metal clips are the same switch to switch, so if you can't find a big switch and you need one of these metal clips, you can get one of the ones from the little switches. Alright. So your lock motor is down right in there, and generally they don't necessarily get weak, but they can get stiff, and sometimes if you work some grease and stuff in there, you can get them to function properly. The window motor, oh, it's down here behind my hand. I usually keep a box or 16 of these various plastic automotive clips. There's like 500 different kinds of clips, and you never have the right one, so it's fairly standard. But if you order them in bulk and whatnot. I need to get my flashlight too, because I like to check the condition. If I don't always pull the lock motors, generally they work. They just everything needs loosened and lubricated, and I'll lubricate the whole lock assembly. Window motors, that's a different story. Not sure about that yet. We'll see. Might just get away with lubricating everything. So we'll do an examination. Put our flashlight down in there. We'll take a look and we'll get our grease and start that process. Oh, one other thing I need to mention: the switches. These GM switches come apart fairly easy. Just gotta be careful not to break any of the plastic. You can just pry it gently at these points with a small screwdriver and pull this out. Make sure you keep your orientation the same way. The big pin goes toward the top. See, it says lock on the bottom. Big pin on top. I don't know if you can see, there's gunk down in there. So anything down in there can get between your contacts, and then you don't have as good of an electrical signal. I'll get my my cleaner, clean that out. Emery board works good for this. You can just kind of sneak it down in there under your copper, brass. Just clean up the connection. Make sure you're getting a good electrical connection there. Sometimes when they sit, the switch just corrodes. Not always. Sometimes, especially when they're sitting, and they just don't work as well anymore. But if that's the problem, it's fairly easy. But generally, oh, and if you're ever in doubt how to put the switch back together, just look at your connection. Remember how I said the pin's on top? So it says lock on the bottom. So then just make sure your long pin winds up on top, opposite your lock text, and you can snap it back together. And the great thing about this is you can kind of plug them back in to test them. Don't even need the door panel or anything really. Take a look at the lock motor. So the way this works is, this is actually kind of a little bit of genius design on GM's part. So, obviously they have electric locks and then non-electric locks, and the only difference is this pin goes through the holder for the linkage, And then the lock motor goes just over this and up and down. So it's basically just an add-on. So if you want electric locks, your thing slips over the end of your lock rod and then it can move it up and down. Now these two screws just hold on your lock motor. You can kind of warm it out without dropping your hardware everywhere. Your electrical connector off. Check this for corrosion as well. It's actually not in terrible shape. The boot here is, well, she's seen better days, but we can kind of clean up our contacts here. Get out your girlfriend's emery board. Just don't tell her about it. Oh, I actually, in my case, she uses them more than me for cleaning up projects and stuff, so can't really complain. So now these are a pretty simple thing, but very easy to test. And I'll show you how to do that here. So we've got our lock motor. We just got two connections hooked up to 12 volts, and of course it's just two pins. You hook it up one way, it goes down. You hook it up the other way, it goes up, because it is DC. It's not a solenoid, it's a motor. This one seems to work pretty good. Generally the motors don't go bad. What happens is the linkages get stiffer over time. So this one clearly works very well. So we're going to lube up the linkage and then put this back in. As far as the linkage goes, your whole lock linkage is back down in there, you know, and it's springs and clips and doodads and things that go up and down and side to side and lever around, and basically you want to have all them greased so that they don't have any friction. That's pretty much all there is to it. So we don't even have to assemble it because we can kind of get to everything really good. I'm going to take my screwdriver with some grease and I'm going to grease some of the points, and then I'm going to work it around with the linkage back and forth until she feels loose enough. Very scientific process. My magnetic flashlight, that would work so much better than this. I don't know. I'm sure that'll work. Probably knock it in the door and lose it. The grease I use, make sure it's waterproof, but if you use a real kind of like sticky axle grease that's really stringy, it'll tend to distribute itself better as you move the parts around. So for the parts you can't get or can't reach, you know, get everything you can reach, but then for the parts you can't, it helps to distribute it through the system. You can work her back and forth. Just make sure to try to get all the moving parts. Do it in the open position and the closed position. Just work in whatever you can get. And in doubt, just use too much grease. It's inside the door, no one will ever know. Can you really have too much grease? I don't know. Oh, it's just getting black like thunder over there. This is... Over there we have black like a tornado's coming, and over here we got sunny, puffy white clouds, and well, I don't know. I mean, this is just exciting. The weather here is something else. So then, of course, installation for this is the reversive removal. Don't forget to plug in your electrical while you can still get to it. The thing you want to check is your connections on here as well. Well, you can get to them. You can kind of stick your emery board down there between the contacts and work it around, and just make sure that got all that junk off of there. And then make sure that, of course, the contacts on here, well, you can get to them. It's inside the door, and you know, it's subject to temperature and moisture and all that good stuff. And back then GM didn't really believe in using too much in the way of waterproof plugs inside this stuff, so you know, so all you can plug her in. And this, of course, you can't get wrong because it has a tab on one side. And then you can just snake her back in there. Your pin back through the motor actuator. And then you can look down here and you can line up your bolt holes once you have that in place. Once you have them in, you can tighten her down. Make sure you get grease all over everything. That's how you know it's really well greased, you know. That's all there is to that reinstallation. Put your wiring loom back in there. And hook up my battery and I can test it. Battery's hooked up and she works. So that's the lock. So now the next thing to worry about is the window. So in this case, of course, this driver's side has a switch for every window, but make sure, just check your contacts and everything, and we're gonna clean that up a little bit, probably with a wire brush. Rain's coming, so I got a brass brush here. I wasn't kidding, rain's really coming. Might have to shut this down. But clean your contacts really good. I'm using brass and not steel. Don't get in here with your steel brush. Something soft like nylon or brass, because you're cleaning brass. If you use steel, you'll really mark it up, and you don't want that. So we can put this in here and test her out. Oh, we gotta have the ignition on for that, don't we? It seems like the switch is working. Seems like the linkage might be really stiff. We give her some help. She leans up there. So I think what we're gonna do, well, after this rain stops, we're gonna take a break. That was a quick soaking rain shower. Take these nuts off here. Again, 10mm. I guess we don't have to have our power on. Wow. Asking for trouble. Okay, so basically, it was a little painful, but basically you take out these two bolts, these two nuts, and then you have to swing the assembly up, pull linkage, and work it out of the tracks on the glass. And now we're going to loosen this so we can get the glass out so we don't scratch it. Hopefully get the assembly out. I don't remember how the motor bolts into this, but I don't know. We're going to figure it out. So to swing this around, you got to take this bolt out and take this Phillips head screw out up here. Don't strip it. You've got to be very careful. Use lots of down pressure. Slow and gentle. These often rust, and if you strip them out easy, if you strip them out, then you're going for the drills. So now that's loose. And of course our glass is loose as well. Snake your assembly out. So you have your window motor out. You can kind of test it. This won't really work for load testing though, but it'll tell you a little bit anyway. This won't tell you everything you need to know. Well, I tried my best to save this window motor, and I just think it's too old and overheated, and the brushes are probably bad, and it just doesn't have enough force to overcome that spring. So it works fine going down, going up, not so much. So we got some new ones here. I just went ahead and bought all 4 because I have a feeling they're all equally in the same condition. These replacement ones, you can tell these are original, but well, they say Delco products on them, or AC Delco, but these have reversible brackets, so you can, you know, handy switch them side to side. They're all the same, but you just switch the bracket around. So on an interesting note, this comes with a variety of small miscellaneous hardware and absolutely no instructions. So we've got 4 of each type. We've got, oh, now we've got 3. Oh, I found it. We've got little Phillips head screws and bolts, which do fit through the hole on the one side, but seems kind of pointless when it doesn't block the plate off on the other. And then we got these, which go through this bracket just fine, but they don't go through there. So I don't know which you're supposed to use. I can't imagine, there's no washers or anything at all with this. I don't know. I guess you can drill these out. Might have to do that. I'm not sure what they expect you to do. The old ones obviously are crimped in, but I guess we're gonna have to fiddle with it ourselves. Well, after a pitched battle, got the regulator back in, and she does go up and down. These apparently, I have this. Oh, that's it. Just drive past real slow with your no muffler. Go ahead. Nothing to see here. Anywho, this is adjusted properly. For some reason, it wants to come out of the groove when it gets down to this point. I guess you need the inner seal pressing against it to keep it seated right sometimes. I haven't run into that before, but no amount of adjustment will keep it in the track when it's down low, which is stupid because that's what the adjustments are for. But oh well, she works now. We're gonna put her back together. I'll move on to the next door. She's all back together. Window works. Goes at the proper speed and everything. Lock works and smoothly. We still have to fix the bezel around the window switches. It's a little busted and it's missing one of these metal pins, which we got an extra around here somewhere, so we'll fix that. Once we have that fixed, we can snap the window switches back in. We have a replacement cover for this, but we won't put that on until we worry about getting all this cleaned up when we get to the cleaning stage. So on to the next door then. Passenger side door, same as the driver's side door, but backwards and reversed, and you know, so we'll just strip that down and do the same thing we did over there. Oh, got the lock switch cleaned. That works. Here's our new window switch. I have the ignition on for that one. And I think we're gonna have to, well, I don't know. Might be able to get away with just greasing this assembly. It's actually moving pretty good. I don't know, cleaning contacts might have actually done a good job. That's actually, okay. Well, that's acceptable. So we can just grease everything on that. And gotta grease the lock. Make sure that's good. I guess we're good for this side then, other than window seals. can pretty much do these lower window seals at any time. Even these you can do without pulling the most of the door apart. You just got to roll the window down. So yeah, I think we're good. That's acceptable to me. It's just as fast as the other side. We'll make sure everything's greased in there. Now, passenger sides back together. Lock works. Window works. We have replacement caps here, and obviously everything needs cleaned up, but we don't bother putting those caps on until we clean it up. So now we can move to the back doors. So preliminary assessment. I can't remember if the back windows are easier or harder. I think they might be easier because they have a bigger hole here. I don't remember. This window appears a bit slow. Might be because of the switch. I don't know. We'll have to clean that up and see. That's unwinding the spring, which you can actually see here. Actually looks like it might be a little bit oily, so that's good. It's not frozen, but oh, that screw was, I turned it in. That's a little bit loose. I don't know what's going on there. So we loosened that, was taking it out? Not sure. Let's see. Going down, winding the spring. She's a little slow. I don't know, this one might be acceptable. I mean, that's about not terrible. Not terrible. This one might be okay. I mean, they never, at the best, ooh, spider. At the best, they never really go too fast, so, you know, it's mostly about the torque. Now it's on my brush. Well, get off of there. We might settle for, well, tightening this for one, but greasing it and verifying everything. Pull that pin out. I believe this lock works too. Gotta, I guess the rears don't have a lock. Gotta check that up here. Or not. These back doors have a long linkage that goes all the way to the front of the door because they can put the lock up here. But there's, and of course then it's got a 90-degree swivel linkage here that just all kinds of joy. That one doesn't want to cooperate. It was kind of sort of working earlier a little bit. Motor's buried down there. I'd have to take all this out anyway just to get to everything. I like that you can get to the spring here and quite possibly grease it, but the spring looks like it's in good shape. It's not sticking or jamming. That's most of the force with rolling the window down that the motor is fighting against, because you have that gravity assist going down, but then of course you're pushing against it going up. So that's why they put that spring in there. Well, one of the reasons. Door handle removed. Gotta be careful when you're doing this. These are a pressure clip, and if you bend the clip too much, it won't snap back in. These two snaps on the other side hold it. There's a groove here, you can see it, and when you're pulling up, if it snaps into that groove, it keeps it from pulling out going further. So you want to make sure you don't bend these up too bad, or it won't snap back together very nicely. All right, we'll get our hands in there. Let's roll the window up so we can get to the lock assembly. I don't know, the more I use it, the more it's, of course that's with the spring. Now here we're not terrible. We might just get away with greasing this one too. Now the one on the other side, the driver's side rear, gets down to about here, and then it makes a horrible crunching, clicking noise. So we will be focusing on that. Tighten this bolt here. See how it runs with that bolt tightened. Because if it runs any more difficult, then that means that something's tight in the linkage and it's resisting it. But I think actually Actually, these haven't been exercised in a while, so you just never know if they're slow because of the motors wearing out, or although, like the driver's side, we had to replace the driver's side motor. There was just no other option. But that's the one that gets used the most because, of course, you know, drivers. So take a look in here at the lock and see what we got. Linkage stuff. Just looking for gunk or anything stuck in the assembly. Also looking for grease points, but also trying to check the condition of the electric motor. These two bolts hold in the electric motor for the lock, so it is easy enough to remove in this case. You don't have to drill out rivets or anything on this door, which is nice. I think the El Camino is riveted, but fortunately on these they use bolts. See how stiff it is still. The linkage in these back doors is just something else. It runs over and down and overly complicated is what I would call it. I'll bring you in here so I could show you what I'm doing, but it's way down inside. Basically, I'm just looking at the lock rods now, trying to pull the right tabs to disconnect the electric motor, and she doesn't want to be disconnected. You remember sometimes this assembly in here can get tight. Sometimes on my other Suburban, maybe it was, I don't know, one Suburban a while back that I worked on, these were so tight that was the whole problem with the lock, that it didn't want to cooperate. It's kind of just resisting. Come on. Okay. So this whole right angle assembly here, so it goes in here like this, and as this moves back and forth, you know, then this moves up and down. That is kind of stiff. I don't know. But like in this case, sometimes they are a little angled and everything too, because I don't know. I might work some grease in there for certain before we put it back in. She's a little tight there. I don't know. We might have to pull that motor and check it out. I think that's what we'll do next before we grease it and make a mess of things. So I figure out that lock rod assembly, pull those two bolts and we'll pull that out. There's no point watching me just fight with my arm inside the door here. Well, we fished the motor out with the wire. We cleaned up the contacts. I'm going to plug this in, and now it's been cleaned up. Let's see if we can kind of exercise it here and see what happens. Okay, well, it's definitely working. I think the contacts were very, very, very dirty. So let's fish this back in, which is not as easy as it looks. So get my bolts first. I'll put them here where I'm sure to drop them. Kind of line her up like this with my one hand and start the screws with the other. Now we can get our linkage back together. Some of this you got to do blind, unfortunately. I don't like working on these doors too much because of that. And swing your plastic lock clip down into place. Alright, so we worked some grease into here. Now we can kind of thread this up and about. Kind of see where the screw heads were. Kind of get it aligned back where you want it, or where the factory put it anyway. At the very least, where it was last. Did we tighten these down? I don't think we did. Okay. So now this goes into the pivot arm. Basically, it was another pivot arm just like that one to kind of take it down. This is a roller for your glass, so that this doesn't bang against the glass. If the glass hits it, it just, you know, or anything else for that matter. These back doors are always stiff manually up and down there because of that all over the place assembly linkage. She still doesn't want to move, so the motor wants to move, but there's a lot of resistance in the linkage, it looks like. So what we're gonna have to do, work grease into this linkage. It's never fun, it's always messy. Basically, I'm just going to way over grease everything. If it moves, grease it. I mean, basically I'm just slopping it on with reckless abandon. Yep, pretty much. You look like you've been part in a murder scene. Got this one all back together. We got window. That's an acceptable speed. These never go just too fast. I don't know if we're going to need to redo the seals at some point. We might. They're a little bit aged. Alright, locks. Alright. So we got one more door to do. Door number 4. Driver's side rear. I'm missing this piece. I had forgotten about that. Find that somewhere. There. I don't know. You can probably find them for a gazillion dollars. Oh no, I have it back here. She just needs some assistance. I don't know. That might be good enough. It's driver quality. I don't know. It's better than nothing. So we'll have to get that at some point. But this window, she's got some issues. Okay, so there's 2 different ways to do this. The first way is we can extract the motor and bring it up by pulling the 3 bolts. The second way is we can pull the whole regulator and window. And I'm feeling lazy, so basically I'm going to snake my arm down in there and try to get those 3 bolts out without dropping anything. So we got our 3 motor bolts out. So basically the only thing holding that in is time and an electrical connection. So I'm going to reach down in there and extract the motor, and hopefully the cord's long enough I can get both my mitts down in there to unplug it. I don't know. Here's our motor. Okay. Basically, I'm gonna look for stripped gears on this. We're gonna have to pull that out to inspect it. Just zip this panel off here. These 2 off. Okay, there's a regulator. Now all we have to do is gently extract the regulator assembly. Well, come on now. Come on now, cooperate. Where's my hammer? My goodness. Alright, well, you give me no choice. Okay, got the bottom track off. Now we can kind of tilt it around until we get it. Got that one off. That one off. Come on now. It's my assistant. She was just here. Why aren't you turning? You want to go that way, but you can't go that way. Well, why not? Come on now. What are you stuck on? My goodness. See here, you. Slice your fingers up, but how do we want to prop this window up? See what we got in the old window propping department. Oh, there, see, you get a nice greasy towel, and you can't tell the blood from the grease, so I'm not bleeding, it's fine, it's just grease. Now I tore the old motor apart from this door, because I wanted to see, you know, if any of the gears inside were stripped. The intermediate gear looks like it's okay. That's nylon. And the motor drive looks okay. That's steel. And these two, I'll just go, these two mesh together like that. So that part is good. I don't know. Oh, that's riveted in. Oh yeah, see, we're missing a gear tooth right there. Just that one, but that's all it takes. It hits that dead spot and then it can't move anymore. So yep, new motor required. And there's the gear tooth that's missing there, caught in the grease. So yep, glad we took that apart just to verify, find our weak zone, so that we, you know for absolute certain that everything else is good. Here's our regulator. And here is our new motor. The other thing we need to do with these, I don't know if I mentioned it in the last one, but these brackets are not threaded. You have to start the bolts and kind of thread them with the existing bolts, and that's easier to do when you just have the motor out separate rather than when you're fighting to mesh the gears. These bolts are 13 millimeter, if you were wondering. Even if you weren't wondering, they're 13 millimeters, so doesn't. Fortunate thing is they're easy to get started, so just want to make sure when I do it this way, I know for certain that I'm getting them straight, no cross threading or anything. Now we can match up our gears. Now, you don't want to over tighten them because, again, that metal on that bracket they give you is really soft. And you don't want to strip them out, so just enough to lock them in place. Don't over tighten them. There's only 3 of them, and if you strip one out, then you're down by 33%. So, well, 33.33333333. You get the idea. Okay, so we're gonna stick this puppy back in and hopefully get her bolted in. These are just no fun because there's a bracket that runs through the door right about here, and you kind of got to snake it through that hole and down over the door bracket, and yeah, it's a pain. So all right, on to the insertion. No way! Get it? Well, okay. Now, I need to plug in the electrical so that I can, now, my calculations are correct, which they're usually not. I should be able to wrap my arms in the gears here. Oh, 1 bolt. 2 bolts. All right, we're professionals now. You can let her go. All right, tighten these down. They're the best. Testing. Oh, testing. That's it, folks. All right, the only thing that remains for this door is the lock system. I did get, I generally keep a couple of these around. The top of this knob snapped off. They make these aftermarket ones. They aren't exactly the same up at the top, but for a passing glance, they work. I'm going to temporarily put this on here so I can work the mechanism. I know the motor works because I saw it kind of trying to budge earlier. She's a little tight. Let's see how well she goes up and down. Not at all, but she moves a little bit, so. Okay, I think we got everything all greased up. Appears to be working now. Now we can begin to start to put our door back together. All right, that'll do it for the doors, locks, and windows on this Suburban. As you can see, it's not really that difficult. It just takes some time and energy and elbow grease and, you know, a lot of cuts and so forth from the sheet metal, but who cares about that? Anywho, if you like what we're doing, feel free to subscribe, like, comment. I do read all the one of you who comment, you know. But if you like what we're doing, that's the way to tell us, or if you don't like what we're doing, that's the way to tell us too. So, you know, it's free, doesn't cost you anything. So that'll do it for this episode. And if you want to see other projects or what else we're doing or what else we have done on this Suburban, then feel free to subscribe and check out our playlist and some of the other vehicles that we've worked on and are going to work on. So thanks for watching if you stuck with us this long, and well, thanks for watching even if you didn't stick with us this long, and we'll see you next time.